Hello and welcome to another edition of the Same Old Stripes podcast. And before we begin, no, I don't know if the Bengals have signed Foster Moreau yet or not. I don't. You don't know. I don't know. None of us know. And no one has any more sources, it seems. We are exiting the free agency window. The Bengals leave with an interesting haul, and we'll talk about all those guys in a second. But first, let's check in with the boys. We got all three of us together today. Tio's in Wisconsin, Billy's in New York. Tio, how are things with you?
A lot better than Ravens fans today. Had to drop that in there. They would be on our case if it was the other way around. So I'm doing pretty well, man. Just got back from Arizona, a little tired. Took the day off and got a nap in. So as you can see on here, my hair's not looking too well. But doing pretty well, man. Excited about the season. Excited about Orlando Brown. I didn't get a chance to talk to you guys about that, but man, things are looking good.
Yeah, we'll check in with you on Orlando Brown here in just a second. But first, Billy, you and I were together for Orlando Brown. We had that conversation. We had that talk. How are things with you, my man? How have things been since? Are you enjoying the Bengals Twitter panic about no running backs and no tight ends?
No, I'm all good on that. I'm taking some mental health days away from that. Kind of excited about some World Baseball Classic tonight, man. We got I don't know if you saw the end of that game last night. It was pretty cool. Japan, Mexico. I think tonight will be a good game. But just kind of a dead period for me. I know the draft is coming in about 5 weeks, right? 5-6 weeks. So just kind of getting ready on some prospects, thinking of what we can do, and I think we'll talk like we talked on our last show of just endless possibilities, which is a good place to be.
Endless possibilities, but there are some things that Bengals fans are freaking out about, and we'll get to all that later. But the draft is going to be a very interesting time. Plenty to talk about on that in the coming weeks because, there's not much else to talk about after the free agency end. It's the draft and it's the draft. That's what we've got ahead. And we'll touch on a little bit of some of our first round ideas because, we're still familiarizing ourselves with this class and kind of what the Bengals fits are. But I think that we got to start the show by talking about some of the guys that we know now are going to be on the roster in 2023. The news that's happened since the last time Billy and I were with you, the Bengals signed re-signed Travion Williams and Max Sharping. They also, struck a minimum deal with Cody Ford, and also signed Nick Scott on a 3-year, $12 million deal. He should replace the Vonn Bell role, but burying the lead. Tio, we got to check in with you, and we'll talk about this as a group a little bit again, but it's been about 5 or 6 days since the Orlando Brown news came down now, and, I think the initial shock of it started to wear off a little bit. I think Bengals fans are all pretty excited, but Tio, give me your kind of feel on this Orlando Brown Jr. splash now that we've had a few days to resonate on it, and just kind of the way you've kind of, I don't know, guess I'm trying to look for the right words, but just felt about his kind of introduction to the team and some of those first messages he shared during his press conference.
Yeah, I was absolutely shocked, man. When you texted us like 45 seconds after it happened, I think I just replied with what? And at that point, I already put my phone away for the night, and I was getting ready for bed. And it lit up, and I went over there, and I was like, nah, he's playing. It just shocked, man. I just couldn't believe it, especially at the rate we got him. If we give that same deal to like a Juwan Taylor or Mike McGlinchey, we feel pretty bad about it. You give it to a guy that's a 4-time Pro Bowler, 2-time Super Bowl champion, a guy that dominated in the playoffs, and you feel damn good about it. What makes it better is the cap hit year one, right, is like, 30, 33 or something?
Yeah.
That's so smart, man. Like, it lines up so well with what you want to do with T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, right? And if you think about it, that's probably that probably set it up for T. Higgins very well, where his cap hit will probably be $8 million in year 2 or whatever. So I'm just really excited, man. It's just shocking, and I know Chiefs fans are trying to shit on the idea of Orlando Brown, but if they know what we've had in the past 10 years, they should be scared. Like we've had the bottom of the barrel at left tackle, really. And that's not really a shot at Jonah. It's just saying he hasn't been that good at left tackle, and hopefully he'll be a average right tackle, and that's really all we need. But so if any Chiefs fan tries crapping on your idea of Orlando Brown Jr., just be like, dude, he's an upgrade from what we had, and that should scare them alone.
I completely agree. I think that's kind of the big thing in all of this. When people try to make you feel bad about Orlando Brown Jr., they don't understand what you had at left tackle. And, we respect Jonah a good, I think at a fair level on this show. I think we're pretty fair to Jonah. But frankly, the health thing has been as big a concern as anything. And, when it's been a revolving door at left tackle, when you're relying on Jackson Carman, who you have not been able to rely on to play any position since he's come into the league, you couldn't rely on him to beat out a fourth-round rookie when he was expected to, Jackson Carman himself to start as a rookie. Yeah, I think it really raises the ceiling on the offensive line, especially if you're looking for a reliability sort of thing. I love the way you put that in perspective, T.O. and Billy. I'll just ask you, any other reflections on Orlando Brown since the last time you and I chatted? Obviously, Orlando Brown's had a press conference and done some appearances since. So anything from your perspective?
Just kind of piggyback off what T.O. said and what we were talking about last week. I think we'll touch on a couple of the other positions that people are kind of going crazy about via Twitter and our fan base. But if you really look at it, man, I mean, this deal, T.O., you laid it up for me here. It's set up for the decision the Bengals made. The Bengals made a decision that T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow are going to be Bengals for a very long time. And I don't know about you guys. I'm completely okay with that decision. I'm completely okay of I don't want to say taking discounted players or less players, but I'm okay of maybe doing some smarter shopping or using some coupons here and there if we can on some guys to keep those guys. So I think that has been kind of what's been laid out for us here, and I think it's underrated. I don't think it's really been talked enough about. But we go 2 months before, into the playoff run, we really didn't know we were going to have a T. Higgins in a year. I think that's about as done could be. The way that some of these contracts are set up and some of the guys that kind of have taken a hit away from this organization. And like we said, when you're good, you can't keep everybody. So it's been very interesting free agency period, but I think, Duke has told us what the direction he's going in with it. And flat out, fellas, I love it.
Billy, you said something there that kind of leads me nicely into my next point of conversation. You can't keep everyone. And two of the guys we know the Bengals couldn't keep, one we thought they would, one we knew they couldn't. Vonn Bell and Jesse Bates out the door. Obviously, we knew Daxton Hill was going to step into one of those safety roles. But Vonn Bell kind of snuck up on him, and their answer, it took a few days. It took a couple visits from a couple different players, but Nick Scott is now signed with the Bengals. Mentioned at the top, 3 years, $12 million over the length of that deal. The Bengals can get out of it after the first year if they need to. Really interesting decision as they replace Vonn Bell in the secondary, a guy that Lou Anarumo really, really liked. He brings 4.45 speed to the secondary. He brings everything the Bengals like as a former 7th-round pick that's kind of played a bunch of different roles. And, now he'll play in his age 28 season. An ascending player. A guy that the Bengals coaching staff has openly compared to Mike Hilton in terms of kind of his story and his rise and his work ethic. I also got some messages from some Rams personnel people who just raved about Nick Scott. It's just very interesting to hear how many people love Nick Scott in that organization and fans of that organization that love him as well. I really like the fit. I'm not saying it's going to give you everything that Vonn Bell gave you immediately, but man, I'll check in with you first, T.O. Give me your thoughts on Nick Scott's, fit in this secondary and the Bengals' decision to go with Nick Scott.
Yeah, I think it's a Lou Anarumo special. I think that's a guy who he kind of targeted. based on all the tea leaves that we've read over the past few weeks. Versatility is the one word that really comes to my mind. And now you can really play with your safeties. Is where when you had Jesse Bates, it's like Jesse Bates is kind of a one-trick pony. And that's not disrespect. Jesse Bates is probably the best at the one-trick pony, right? like what he does playing deep center is he's one of very few that can do that. And you feel good about that. But Jesse, the writing was on the wall with him. He was going to be gone regardless. And he's gonna ball out for Atlanta. So best of luck to him. Obviously, Vonn Bell was kind of a shocker. And we all wanted him back. I wanted Vonn Bell back, but at the same point, that's a lot of money to tie up. And say you do sign him to that contract, that might spell the end of the T. Higgins thing. So I think it's a smart value signing, man. You kind of slightly downgrade. Like Vonn Bell's not all world at what he does. He's a very good leader, very good vocal guy, very good player. But I think you can get a lot more versatile with Nick Scott, and now you can really play and mix match your safeties. And it doesn't stop you from necessarily grabbing a safety in the draft, or even, say Kevin Byard gets released and he's like, sure, I'll take a $5 million deal. Come play with you guys for a year or two. It doesn't stop you from doing that. And that's kind of what I like. It gives you the flexibility to go out and do things. Sidney Brown's waiting for you there. Go ahead and snag him. Or Jarvis Martin, the guy I love, who plays slot and safety. It's like you can do so much still, and that's kind of what I like. And it's a really cheap deal, and I'd be shocked if he didn't see all 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals also have a tendency to see these contracts out. They give themselves escape options because they're not morons about protecting their future by any means. They're not going to Saints themselves into anything. Billy, I know that I think the big thing for me is the leadership thing that they're losing in Vonn Bell. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or anything, but that's one thing that comes to mind. But the Nick Scott press conference was really impressive to me. I don't know. I think that Tio's right about the Lou Anarumo special concept. I think that's on the money.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on Nick Scott, man? I think this is such an interesting signing.
Yeah, I agree. I think the leadership aspect of Vonn is something that's a tough pill to swallow. But I'll go back to what Travis Kelce said Super Bowl week about the Bengals. That was the most together group he played all year, and I think that's what you kind of have to expect from the Bengals defense this year. A lot of guys who have a lot to prove. I think what this move tells me is that, Dax Hill really is going to be a prime candidate in that secondary this year. And I'm completely fine with that. When you look about how he played in a couple of the snaps he got against Buffalo and some snaps down the stretch. So I think it's going to be a lot of Marcus Bailey, a lot of Dax Hill, a lot of Nick Scott, a lot of these guys that have a lot to prove to get out there. And truthfully, it's like you said, it's a Lou Anarumo special. If there's any guy in the league that can do more with less, it's Lou. And not at all am I concerned that this team can't win a Super Bowl with this defense, because I think it's still superior up front. I think they're still as solid as can be in the linebacker room, and I think they're good enough in the secondary department. I think one of the big things, like you said about Jesse being a one-trick pony and about Vonn, like, let's be completely honest, we've gotten so much pressure in the last 2 seasons that they really haven't been tested to the point of how they're going to be tested in Carolina and Atlanta, respectfully. Obviously Vonn makes some huge plays, like the forced fumble in New England. Like, can't take any of that stuff away from him. But we're being completely honest. I mean, nobody was really slinging the ball on the Bengals like they will be in the NFC South in a couple of these years.
It's a hell of a point. And I think they're in a good spot with defensive back with the speed right now. That's what I keep coming back to when I think about these what they've done with this position. When you have guys that are, you're transitioning now from a different feel in your defensive backfield. I think we were talking about it after the Super Bowl season, but this defense felt a little slow. Like, I think we had open conversations about the speed not really being there. And now, over and over again, you have, you draft Cam Taylor-Britt, who's sub 4 I think he's a 4.38 guy. Daxton Hill's a 4.34 guy, I think. I want to say Tyson Anderson's a 4.37 40 guy, and then you bring in Nick Scott at a 4.45. I'm very interested to see what Lou Anarumo does with all this speed. I do want to pivot now to a totally different conversation about a totally weird thing that the Bengals have going on. And it's a conversation we haven't been having on this show because I didn't think we were going to have to. But it's time to talk about Jonah Williams again, guys. It's time to have the right tackle conversation. And I think a part of this conversation should be about, a move like Cody Ford, which does solidify them a little depth. Cody Ford's going to come in and be a right tackle. Interestingly, a guy who was assigned to guard his first couple seasons in the NFL. Just like Jackson Carman, he is now openly spoken about being more comfortable at tackle. So interesting, the Bengals are going to take another project like that on. Cody Ford, notably teammates with Orlando Brown Jr., opposite ends of the offensive line at Oklahoma during college. But burying the lead there, Jonah Williams requested trade after Orlando Brown signs. And I think we all knew that was potentially in the equation. I don't think that it necessarily sits the best with everyone, just all things considered. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. In a perfect world, I'd be curious to hear your perspective. And Billy, I'll ask you to start. I mean, would you rather, have Jonah Williams start the season and be your starting right tackle or be in that competition for right tackle? Or, are you going to try to grant this trade at this point? Are you going to try to look for another option at right tackle, be it in the first round or something you have internal? I think that's the big, interesting question that we really are going to have left in the Bengals offseason. It almost leaves like a Jesse Bates III funk over this team once again. So your thoughts on that, Billy?
I would definitely grant the trade just off of the aspect of, just going to get something off of a guy who's going to walk next year anyway, most likely, even if he plays right tackle. I think they did right by him by kind of offering it to him, in my opinion. It hasn't really been publicly out there, but I'm sure the call was made to the agent and to Jonah about moving to right tackle. And I'm a little different than a lot of, people out there, probably even you guys. I'm not mad at Jonah for requesting a trade. I think someone put it out. I forgot where it was. I think on Twitter about the difference between right tackle and left tackle, and the average salaries is like $9 million.
Yeah, it's significant.
I don't have any problem with him requesting a trade because at the end of the day, he was hurt in his playoff run, but he was a left tackle in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. He's gonna get paid somewhere. Despite his production or PFF numbers, there's no denying that Jonah Williams won a conference championship as a left tackle that started 95% of the games that year. So I don't begrudge him at all for it. I think it's probably honestly personally the right move for him. But I'm more of the let's take a tackle at 28, have him come in and compete with Ford right away. And kind of see how it goes. I would definitely grant the trade for Jonah, though. I just think it's a smart move on the future part of the Bengals, and like you said, the Bengals are taking care of their future. So I would definitely grant the trade.
And another interesting part in this, and I'm going to have Tio go before I do, but Billy, part of granting that trade is you got to find a partner. I really wonder how many partners they're going to have that are going to make their team better in 2023. And that's one of the big things in the equation for the Bengals too and I think you were kind of hinting at that. You'd grant the trade, but it's got to, I feel like it does have to benefit the team at some point. Does that do it with one thing alone? I don't know. I can't find too many teams that fit. That's the hard part for me in this, and I'll talk about some other thoughts here in a second. But Billy, I think that you do grant the trade because you do solidify that future. I'll talk more about that in a second too. But Tio, are you kind of on the same boat with us? Are you feeling granting this trade, or do you think you try to keep Jonah Williams around? Also, what we want to do, it might be very different than what the Bengals actually end up doing.
Yeah, so I've actually kind of struggled with this idea. I went on I was trying to put out my mock 2.0 today, and I couldn't pull the trigger on trading Jonah. The reason is because I was unsure. At that point, when you get to 28 on the mock draft, there's certain guys you like, certain guys you don't. There wasn't really a tackle there that I was like, oh, I have to have. And that's what made me kind of hesitate to trade Jonah there. It's like, if you trade Jonah, it feels like it'd have to be after you already know what you have in round 1. So maybe like a day 2 draft day trade. But yeah, I'm struggling with it, man. I don't know. I don't know what to do. Bengals rarely do picks for players, or, usually they want a player back regardless. And, you even see it in the Carlos Dunlap. They go out and get I can't even remember the dude's name, but from Seattle, they end up getting the center from Seattle back with the 7th or something. To me, the logical thing is calling up the Jets and being like, yo, let's do player for player. You guys haven't had very good luck with Mekhi Becton. We haven't had very good luck with Jonah. Let's give them both a fresh start. I think that would be your best avenue. And then at 28, it really opens you up. You don't have to go get a tackle. You can go BPA or whatever, defensive line. But yeah, I'm kind of, I don't know. I'm cool with Jonah starting the season out with us. It makes our line a lot better than, having Cody Ford out there, which Cody Ford, fine, but I don't really want him protecting that. Yeah.
Really? Cody Ford?
That's what we're doing here?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, so that's how I feel. I'm cool with Jonah staying, but like Billy said, if he stays, I think you really need to address right tackle pretty early in the draft for future years, because the worst thing possible to do is keep Jonah, don't address tackle in the draft, and then next year you're going into the offseason, it's like, oh, crap, we need a right tackle, because at that point you'll probably know what you have in LC.
So I think realistically, what it comes down to is going to be differently than we all kind of view it. I just think they view it as Jonah Williams is under contract, and that's the way we're going to write it out. So, Tio, I think that you're kind of right. I mean, you don't want to have to marry yourself to one of these tackles in round 1 if you don't have to, because there's going to be other opportunities on that board that honestly, here's how I think I'm visioning in my head. Last year, you have things fall into your lap. You have a safety who you have as a top 15 player on your board fall into your lap at 31. And a guy like George Karlaftis, who you love, who is definitely a guy that would have turned the key on at 31, falls to the Chiefs at 30. Stuff is going to be on the board for them with their pick. And that's what it makes a lot of this really hard for me when I also weigh it down. I just have a hard time seeing them looking at this scenario and saying they want to make another team better this season. And that's what it comes down to for me.
Hey, I will say one thing I think that's kind of interesting about this whole thing is that, Jay Morrison tea leaf that he dropped with us a few weeks ago, if you want to go back and listen to that. And then them telling Cody Ford that he can compete for the right tackle job. And then the report about Jonah coming out about how he wants to be traded. I think if the right offer comes on the table, I think they'll take it. But that's just kind of reading into things, I don't think in any world you tell Cody Ford that you can come in and compete for right tackle until LC gets healthy, right?
Yeah.
So I will drop you with that.
Willie, let me ask you a question. Do you think if the LC injury doesn't happen, same result in the playoffs and everything, we go into Kansas City, we lose, but LC plays out through the AFC Championship game, do we go get Orlando Brown or no?
I think they absolutely do. I don't think that
so
changes
too.
anything. The level of play you saw from Leo Collins last year was not good. So that's a notion that's – let's get into Bengals offensive line if we're going to get into Bengals offensive line. This notion that Leo Collins played at an acceptable level for long stretches last year is mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
I've said it over and over again. He was a good run blocker. He was one of the worst pass blocking tackles in the NFL. Bar none, on film, by metric. It doesn't matter. The Jonah Williams sack stat, we can pull that up all day long. There's no doubt in my mind he was a better pass protecting tackle in every single game than Leo Collins.
Yeah.
And I thought Leo Collins, I think he'd be one of the better backup tackles in the NFL if he was a backup tackle for you. But you don't want him starting if you don't have to at this point in his career.
Right.
And especially in the offense the Bengals run. Like, it just, you can't drop back this many times, and especially these games that go on for a long time and guys get worn out as the games go on. Actually, he actually seemed to settle into games better than he started. Um, one of those kind of guys, honestly, kind of funky. Some guys are just like that. But I think Orlando Brown Jr. was, this situation falling for them the way it did always would have happened. Like, La'el Collins did not play at a level well enough last year for him to guarantee anything for 2023.
Agreed.
Yeah, and so that's kind of that. Man, and the other part of this conversation is, what's fair compensation for Jonah Williams? I mean, I know that some people would love to say, give me a bag of dirt and I'll call it a day, but I think a third is a number that's been thrown around a lot. I honestly think that might be a little low. I think that might be me being a little too high on Jonah, but there aren't a lot of guys in the league that are available and capable to play left tackle at an acceptable level in the NFL. And we know that. That's why we had Jonah Williams penciled in to be a starting left tackle next season and weren't going to be totally hamstrung about it. I think that's what makes a draft day trade so interesting to me, because, I mean, someone calls you up, the Jets need a tackle because Aaron Rodgers is coming and they needed to use their day 2 pick on it. I mean, maybe that's something you do. Any of you guys have any thoughts on what is acceptable for Jonah Williams?
I would personally say a 3. The only reason I would say that is because I do think he goes to, and the Bengals probably trade him to a non-contender. So I think it would be a 3 within the first 12 to 14 picks, I'll say.
I'll say that they almost got a second and a third for A.J. McCarron. And that's just how the Bengals do business. They're not going to sell him for something that they don't like. So I don't think they move him unless they get a second.
Yeah. I would be surprised, honestly, just knowing how weird they are about this kind of stuff. Like, they just don't move off of guys. It feels weird to me, this whole situation. I'll leave with this quote from Frank Pollock about the situation, because I think it does provide interesting perspective on what it might take for him to be right tackle. But Frank Pollock said it'll be a little bit of a transition, but he's athletic. He's a smart player. He's a really good player in that regard. I think he should have no problem getting over doing that with reps and constraints. He's got a whole off season. Guys have been asking him to do that all the time. There's a little bit of transition going left to right, but I'd say it'd be a little bit smoother going from tackle instead of going from guard. But he's a good player. He's smart. He's athletic. He understands what he does at the highest level, and he's a tactician type player. I think he can do it. Maybe. That doesn't sit the best with me. I'll leave that as is. Nevertheless, a vote of confidence from Frank Pollock in some regard. The other item on Bengals Twitter that is not the running back conversation that we're not going to get into because we have lives that we care about. Tight end. What's up with that? The tight end thing is slowly becoming a kind of a concerning thing for the Bengals in the grand scheme of things. I think that all of us would love for the Bengals to have a capable starting tight end or even a capable backup tight end right now. Devin Asiasi is the only tight end with experience on the roster. Speaking of roster, let's talk about Foster. Foster Moreau was in town for a visit last week, also visited with the Saints. It kind of seems like he's deciding between the Bengals and the Saints. There hasn't been any news from his camp since. Irv Smith Jr. is still out there, I guess. But, Tio, I'll let you jump in first. How concerned are you with this Bengals tight end situation, and how important do you think it is for them to ultimately land Foster Moreau? Because, I mean, would you be pretty concerned if they go into the draft and they need to pick a tight end in round 1? I know it's a good tight end class, but yeah.
Yeah. Like me and you kind of talked about it before we jumped on here. It's like the worst thing you can do going into the draft is having a need that you have to have, right? So like if they go into the draft, and say they sign I don't know, Drew Sample, so they have 2 tight ends in the room. It just pigeonholes you to where you almost are guaranteed to take a tight end first or second round. And there's just more pressing needs and better value that you can get out of those 2 picks than tight end. And now, like, if tight end falls to you, right, Sam Laporta falls in your lap at 60, that's perfect, right? Take it regardless. But if you don't have that tight end and you get to 60 and Sam Laporta's gone, okay, now who's your next guy? Tyler Kraft or whatever, which I'm not very excited about. That doesn't excite me. So that's where I'm at. It's just I feel like they've had a few guys that have signed very cheap out there already that they really could have taken advantage on. Mike Gesicki covers 2 needs, signed a cheap deal with New England, right? It's like,
Yeah.
If you get within $1 million of that deal, I'm sure Mike Gesicki's like, oh, who do I want to catch passes from? Mac Jones in a run-happy offense or Joe Burrow in a pass-happy offense?
Yeah, it's pretty easy for me.
Exactly. And, I'm not very high on Dalton Schultz. I think Foster Moreau's a better tight end than Dalton Schultz. I just think he hasn't shown it yet.
You know what the thing on that was, right? The Mike Gesicki?
No.
He's a Penn State tight end, and Bill O'Brien was the head coach at Penn State when he was recruited. So he's a Bill O'Brien guy. That's what happened there.
I just don't understand why you'd want to go to a run-happy offense. Doesn't make sense to me. But Mike Gesicki, go fumble your bag again, man.
Yep.
And play behind Hunter Henry. It makes 0 sense to me. But, that's where I'm at, man. I feel like Foster Moreau or nothing at this point. I do really like him as a player. I think he has a chance to be very good. The only reason I even know about him is because I drafted Darren Waller almost every year for the last 5 years, and he's been hurt a lot. So I've always had Foster Moreau on my roster too. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm at Foster or bust at this point.
Foster or bust seems to be the general vibe in Bengals land right now. I don't hate drafting a tight end first round, but I hate hamstringing myself. Billy, I'd love to get you to weigh in on this for us. Where do you feel on all this tight end nonsense?
I'll put it this way. I told you guys today as I was picking my daughter up from school, I went down the rabbit hole the last week and a half of watching pretty much every Bengals game I can get my hand on YouTube in my YouTube TV library. One game that I did watch was the Buffalo Bill game. If you remember in that game, Hayden Hurst scored a pretty big touchdown in that game. Now, trivia, Willie, because I know you're going to know it. What number touchdown was that for Hayden Hurst on the year?
3?
That was number 2.
Oh, my God.
That was number 2 and final touchdown of his season.
Ooh.
So I'm going to put it this way, and I understand it gets a lot of clickbait. There's a lot of, and this is no disrespect to anyone out there on Twitter, there's a lot of stuff you can debate and clips you can put. For everything Hayden Hurst was worth, he caught 2 mother effing touchdowns all season. I don't really begrudge guys like Hayden Hurst or like Gesicki for not coming here. Guys, you're getting paid. Susan's getting paid. But it goes back to the Orlando Brown thing and who we're keeping. This is a T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow show. It is what it is. By the way, when I heard that on the broadcast, I was like, no freaking way. I had to look it up, and that actually was his second touchdown of the year and final touchdown of the year. So
it's not good.
It's just besides that,
he had a couple drops in the end zone too.
He had a few drops in the end zone throughout the year. I can probably pinpoint a couple offhand, but my biggest thing is where's the need for a tight end, but you tell me the Bengals can't put up 24, 25 points a game with this offense right now. You can fucking put Devin Asiasi at tight end for 80% of the snaps. It doesn't matter to me. There's just there's flexibility if you get a guy like Gesicki, you can play outside more, but I'm perfectly fine with getting a tight end at 55, at 60. Or if you trade up a few picks in the second round, you really like somebody. Fine by me. I think Foster is a great pick. I know that. I think I was talking to you, Willie. I think the big issue is the comp picks that depending when they sign him and how much they give him. So it's got to be the right move. But that's a staggering stat to me, fellas, that I think tells us all we need to know And if we really wanted to go down the rabbit hole and look at the running back stacks, I think it could tell us all we need to know about that picture too. Like the the method for this team to winning, again, as we said, 14 games, hopefully, and getting a number 1 seed is through 3 guys. You protect the one guy, you give him time, you're able to run the ball enough and get over the middle throws enough for the other 2 guys on the outside. Like it's like that. It's like that. The meme we had going on last year with the whole Penny Sewell thing, of option A, Joe Burrow getting protected and throwing the ball to kind of nobody, or option B, Joe Burrow still semi getting protected and throwing the ball to Jamar Chase in the end zone. I'll take option B all day.
Just to kind of butt in here real quick, the only reason I was super high on Mike, man, is just because one of the big 3 go down, with TB, Chase, and Higgins. Mike Gesicki could have filled any of those roles out there, and been treated like a receiver. Whereas in the championship game, once Boyd goes down, you don't have that guy, man. No one, as much as we love Trent Taylor and Trent Irwin, no one's scared of those guys, man. So the odds of us having all 3 healthy for the entire year, including playoffs, isn't very likely. And that was my only point, man. You want to go get another dog, man, that can really fill roles. And my vision was a Mike Gesicki with Sam Laporta in the second. You're deep at that point. You're so deep that a guy falls off for 4 weeks. You're not missing a beat, and Bengals have already proven that. Without one of the 3 guys, they won't miss a beat. But
it's funny you said that, because I mean, as I let you guys know, I gotta go in a few, so I'm not gonna get to all our draft talk, but I'll put this out. I'm with you with that, and I'm also with it that I'm okay with a receiver in the first 3 rounds to add to that depth as well. Just because, like you said, they're not gonna have all 3 of them healthy, and obviously, like, TB going down in Kansas City was huge. Like, nobody can dispute that. But I think it also showed Hayden Hurst's worth, because TB goes down, and it's not like Hayden Hurst was a freaking world killer in Kansas City. Like, and if I would have told you again that stat of Hayden Hurst caught 2 touchdowns, and I told you Jamar Chase didn't play 4 games, like, it's one of those things where, and it's not a hit on Hayden Hurst. I think it's more so the style of play and the play call. But, like, I just don't see it, man. I don't see a place where you need to pay a tight end anywhere over $4.5-5 million a year here. Like, it's just, there's no value for it in what we do. Like, I everyone's on the Zach Ertz train. I caught a point a year or 2 ago. I mean, like, that's fine. Like, I'm okay with guys who are like, and that's where I think, honestly, after this year, it kind of becomes is more of like that Dalton Schultz type of a guy who's like a veteran guy that's already kind of gotten paid, that's like kind of outlasted his contract somewhere. But at this point, like, I find it hard for anyone to kind of give me the argument of we need to pay a tight end anywhere over $5.5-6 million. Like, I'm not upset if it happens. It's like what you said, Tio. I think you make a great point. It's a depth piece, but that's all tight end is to us at this point, fellas. It's a depth piece, and I'll let you guys like counter back before I get out of here. But in my opinion, like, that's all it is. Like, tight end is great, but I don't think tight end's like a piece of. If we go into week 1 with Devin Asiasi and a 2nd round pick, whoever it might be of the 3 or 4, I'm not losing sleep over it.
No. Just a quick non sequitur stat. This is your friendly reminder that Joe Mixon had 3 rushing touchdowns against teams not named the Carolina Panthers last season. Just while Billy was getting very motivated there. So that being said, no, Billy, you're right. It's not for the Bengals in particular. And you talk about Hayden Hurst and guys and all that kind of situation, but the reality of the situation is Joe Burrow's going to put up whatever with whatever tight end. We all saw what CJ Uzomah looked like in New York. He looked like just a guy.
Yeah.
He looked fine. He looked like a backup NFL tight end. He looked like Mitchell Wilcox.
Yes. Yes.
So Joe Burrow made Mitchell Wilcox look better than Mitchell Wilcox. So I think you're kind of right. I think Foster Moreau does elevate that position, but that's why I have such a hard time with picking a tight end in the 1st round in particular. It just, and especially in a deep tight end class, like, you can get so much out of a tight end with Joe Burrow as your quarterback.
I'll before I head out of here, fellas, I gotta hear one day. I forgot who had the tweet. I think somebody had to. I think it might have been Begalorian today with the picture of Tyler Eifert. Like, hey, bud, what are you doing this year? I mean, I'm almost at that point too, where like Give me Tyler Eifert off of killing Natty Lights for 2 years, and I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, man, just get open and have long arms and catch the football. We'll figure it out.
Let's go. All right, fellas. I got to run, man. Who dey?
Yeah, who dey? All right, let's get to the back half. The final little segment we're going to do, T.O. We're going to do top 3 positions of need transitioning from free agency to the draft. And as we've discussed throughout this show, the Bengals have left some holes for themselves. They've left themselves some homework to do. There's a lot of different ways this conversation can go. I can think of a lot of different directions the Bengals could potentially look into. Man, it'll be interesting to see if they can wrap up any other homework before the draft. And by the time this podcast comes out, they could sign 3 players. But T.O., I'll let you start first. Your 3 positions of need. You can rank them if you want, but top 3 positions of need transitioning from free agency to the draft.
I'll start with the one we just touched on. I think tight end. I think if you can bring a guy like Foster in, or really even Irv Smith, who's had really a lot of injuries and hasn't had a chance to really show what he's been able to do, but he does have the potential to be a good tight end. Yeah, and we kind of touched on that. The reason I take that is because you don't want to pigeonhole yourself into having to take one in the first 2 rounds, even though I think they will regardless.
Yeah.
But there's really certain guys that you feel really good about, and then the rest you just are kind of taking a chance on. So that's my first one. My second one will be I'm going to go defensive line, man, and that's any type of defensive line, interior and edge rushers. The reason I say that is because I don't think you can realistically take an edge early this year, just based on the kind of the needs that they've left open, which maybe they're doing it strategically, right? Because they want to hit running back, they want to hit tight end in the draft because it is kind of a deeper class. And a lot of people seem to like the running back class.
So one note on the defensive line thing, just as you mentioned it, where do you think the Bengals rank in the league on defensive line spending?
Oh, man. It's got to be up there. It's got to be top 10. I'll say 8.
They rank 3rd in defensive line spending. They're spending $59.9 million in cap space on defensive linemen in 2023.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I think you might be on to something. I don't know if they're going to pay another premium defensive lineman.
Right.
And that first round slot. Yeah.
I would really like if they went out and got, I think Yannick Ngakoue is probably too expensive.
Maybe.
Leonard Floyd really, really kind of clicks for me. 31 years old, veteran type, still has some juice left. I think that would be the guy for me if I was going out and attacking someone, would be Leonard Floyd. I think you can get him cheap. But yeah, that's my second. And then my third will be running back. And that's because Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think running back, I think you need more juice in that room. And really, that's just the biggest thing. You just need a guy that's good running out of shotgun.
Yeah.
And that's something you don't have and haven't had. And that's not debatable.
No, it's not. They don't have system fit running backs. They're just now getting system fit offensive linemen. So when you have that combination going on, they really do need some more juice out of the backfield. I also had running back as my number 3. I did weigh putting it number 1 because I think you need 2 guys there realistically. You need someone to replace that Samaje Perine role. And people have said Travion Williams. I don't think that's the intent of his resigning. He's a minimum. I mean, he's a 1-year deal. That's a depth signing. That's a guy that you don't feel bad if you have to cut. That's my number 3. My number 1 is also tight end. All the same reasons. I still have a little bit of a stomachache trying to think about them spending a first-round pick on Michael Mayer. I don't know. It could be okay. I have it in my notes because we'll do this another time, but it'd be a slam dunk pick, maybe. Like it could work out that way. I don't feel that way about him as a prospect at this very minute. But instead of, I'd have defensive line number 4. I have right tackle number 4. I think that I mean, I told you guys how I feel about La'el Collins. I don't love the idea of having Jonah Williams play out this 1 year, and then that's it. That's your answer. You have to find it the next offseason. If you're protecting Burrow and you're going to take this seriously and you're going to maximize this rookie contract window, I think that it would be such a statement move to draft a right tackle in the first round or to go out and sign someone like Isaiah Wynn. Because then you have everyone except for Karras on your offensive line signed for 3+ seasons, and you have Karras for the next 2 at least. And I'd imagine they'd extend him probably following this season because I don't think Ted Karras is going anywhere. It doesn't. I can't imagine. That's that's just not going to happen. So that's my top 3 positions. Do you have any thoughts on me going right tackle there instead? I just think that realistically, a great offensive line is going to do wonders for this team. And I hate to bring up the Chiefs as the replicator, but that Chiefs offensive line this year was a huge difference in what brought them to the Super Bowl and allowed them to ultimately cross the finish line.
So you went right tackle as your number 1 need?
Number 2, I have tight end number 1 and running back.
Tight end number 1, okay. Dude, I love you putting right tackle in there, man. I think you could really make that offensive line a strength if you go get the right guy. Talk about the one thing teams really look forward to playing the Bengals is they've never had a strong offensive line. You give Burrow that, and now you're really scared, right, with those weapons. Go ahead, sit too high. We don't care at that point, right? So I love that, man. I think if the right guy's there, I think that would be a slam dunk. And I think with this draft, man, you do mock drafts, and it always comes back to the same thing. There's a tackle you really like at 28, whereas you might be taking a chance somewhere else. For me, Darnell Wright is an absolute home run for me. I think if that guy's there at 28, that's who I would run to the podium with. He plays right tackle. Don't think there's going to be issues in the future about him wanting to play left tackle.
No, it's not pretty.
And right, and that's something that you got to really keep an eye out for. Like Anton Harrison, even there might be if you start him at right tackle, 3 years in, he's going to be like, I want to play left tackle because I want to get paid, right? So you kind of need to worry about those things in the future. But yeah, man, getting those guys locked up for 4+ years would be incredible. Your tackles, and imagine.
Honestly, it's so you said defensive line, I said right tackle. This team could do better by getting better in the trenches, just like every team in the league could. You can always be better in the trenches. It's just the reality. It's when you have the big dudes that control the line of scrimmage, it changes everything. I mean, I think that the last 2 Super Bowls have been such a good referendum on what good line play does on both sides of the football. I mean, the Bengals and Rams, not to relitigate that, but a bad offensive line, allows Aaron Donald to get through and finally get that hit on Joe Burrow that allows the Rams to seal the game. And the Rams had all day long to throw it at the end of the game, and they needed to seal the game.
Let me ask you a question. If you could sign any 3 free agents that are still available to kind of get rid of some of the needs going into the draft, what would be your either 3 positions or 3 people?
That's a great question. Do you have yours off the top of your head? Because I know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
can go first. I'm going to look real fast.
Yeah. So I'll start, and this isn't in any particular order, but I'm going to go with Mani Ojawari. You guys know I've been high on him for a while. Yeah. I just think he provides a little bit more than Eli does. If you get 6 interceptions in the league, that's not by accident. You have to have talent to do that. People will scream Josh Norman, right? Right. He still had a very long and successful career. But I think that guy gives you a cheap signing, and if you can lock him up for multi-years, that's even better. With a couple of our free agents coming up like Cheeto. And it gives you a guy that really, say he has an awesome year and you only sign him to a 1-year comp-like formula, right? So that's my first one, and that kind of eliminates you having to draft a cornerback in the draft. My second one would be Leonard Floyd. We already touched on him. I think he just provides you a little bit of juice, a little bit of depth, and a guy that I would assume that's not going to be too pricey. And then my third one is going to be Dalton Reisner, and I don't know if Willie will like that or not. The only reason I say that is because we're really kind of in wave 3, 4 right now, free agency. You got to wonder what's going on with his value. I'm not sure what's going on with him. The last time I saw him, he was yelling at backup quarterback on the sideline, and I kind of wonder if that has something to do with it. He was a Walter Payton finalist. I know the Bengals really liked him coming out. What if they give him a phone call and they're like, "Hey, we got $5 million for you." What does he say to that? And I think that really raises the floor of your offensive line. Willie, you talked about that on the last pod. I thought you did a great job about that, just raising the floor and the ceiling of your offensive line. You put him into that starting lineup at left guard, watch out.
And I actually just had this conversation with Twitter with someone earlier today. The later it gets in this process, the more you have to think about it. Because, when it first kind of got started, I mean, it would have been what? We were talking like maybe $10 million a year for him. I mean, you look at it now, maybe he's $4.5 million, $5 million. You come in and frankly, you don't know if he's going to be, I mean, what's year 2 Cordell Volson going to give you? He's played at a totally different level. He's going to have an offseason to work with NFL nutritionists and trainers and everything. For all we know, he could come in and he could be better than Dalton Reisner was last season. We don't know that. But you have Dalton Reisner as a low-end lineman 6. I love it. Having Volson or Reisner as your backup lineman, I think that's an amazing situation to be in. I am all about it at this point. I'd bang on the table for it. I think it's a great value, and it's, Cody Ford's something, but that's a commitment to raising the floor on your offensive line. I love it, T.O. I do love that idea. Sorry, I got hung up. And was that your second guy or your third guy? I totally got
that was my third. But I can list a bonus one if I need to.
I'll do mine, and then you can throw in a bonus one at the end of the episode. Amani, I got a little love in my heart for Amani. I would just love to see him as the Eli Apple deal and see what you got. I mean, why not? If the worst comes to worst, he's a pretty good tackler. He can get you some good reps on special teams. And there's always a job for that. That's always a good place to be. And then you earn those snaps. Someone gets a little nicked up, get right in that lineup, and you figure it out, baby. That's the NFL. Talk to Nick Scott about that. So I ran through a list. Foster Moreau, obviously, is going to be the big name on there the Bengals fans want to hear. The other name I'll throw out there that I think might solidify a problem for them, I would love for them to go out and get Isaiah Wynn. I really like Isaiah Wynn as a player. I think that last year, him getting thrown into Matt Patricia offense, I think that was such an unfair situation for him. An ascending player until that year, got better each season until that year. I would love Isaiah Wynn on a 1 or 2 year flyer, solidify that right tackle position, especially because that gives you the opportunity to trade Jonah out and get a little bit of an asset, and you might be getting an upgrade at a discount. The other name I'll throw out there is A'Shawn Robinson. The Bengals have obviously had plenty of connections with former Rams free agents. A'Shawn Robinson's still a good player. He's 28, still definitely got some upside. I would really like to see them make a little run at an interior defensive tackle. I think he gives you a little something in the pass rush. That's just something that I would like to see them, one way or another, look at in the draft or in free agency. But A'Shawn Robinson's a name I like. Any thoughts on those? And you can throw in your bonus name if you'd like. If you don't.
I really like the Isaiah Wynn, man. I think that really opens you up in the draft.
That's why I love it.
Yeah, I think that might be the gold standard in this one. And you're right. You look at his first 3 years, and he was graded 70 or above in every year, and his pass blocking was great. And then you look at last year, and
Matt Patricia decides he's an offensive coordinator.
Right.
Okay,
that's credit to him, man. And I wonder why he hasn't been signed yet. I mean, the league's full of a lot of smart guys. They know Matt Patricia's probably not the best offensive mind. I don't know. It doesn't really make sense. But I wonder what Isaiah Wynn's numbers at this point. Because it kind of feels like it should be lower than whatever Luminor signed for. Which That's weird to me. But I would love that. I think that'd be a very good resource spent. And then obviously I forgot to even mention Foster Moreau. That's just an obvious one. They really need it. But yeah, I think my bonus one would be this is more based on a release. If Kevin Byard gets released, I think that would be a slam dunk, man.
Ooh,
I think depending on what he wants, and he's going to command. At this point of the market, he's probably not going to get the top dollar that he wanted. But what is he making? 12 this year. He didn't want to take a pay cut, so he probably wants 12 again. He wouldn't get 12. I would absolutely love that signing. I think Kevin Byard's a top 5 safety in the league, and if you can get him at $6 million or half the price of what he wanted, come in here for a year, be a mentor. Be a guy that can lead your defense. I think he could really raise the floor of this defense.
And Lou Anarumo would love him.
Oh, yeah, and Byard can do both things too. He can play box, he can play deep, he can do whatever you want him to do.
Well, that's all we got for you guys on today's episode of the Same Old Stripes podcast. Might have something for you guys later this week. I'm working on trying to get a hold of someone to tell me a little bit more about Nick Scott and Orlando Brown Jr., but that's all we got for you for now. Billy already took off, so for Billy and T.O., I'm Willie, and Hoo-Day.
Hoo-Day.